Henry Hazlitt brilliantly popularized sound economics. In his most well-known work, Economics in One Lesson, he showed how almost every mistake and fallacy in economics belongs to one category. The lesson Hazlitt had for us is that when analyzing an event or policy, we must take a comprehensive view. An incomplete view might ignore a forgotten individual or group, or neglect the long-run consequences while focusing on the short run. Hazlitt followed his own advice. His prolific work on economics in magazines, newspapers, and books all demonstrate the importance of this lesson. He demolished Keynesianism, socialism, government interventionism, price controls, government welfare, fiat money, expansionary monetary policy, and all kinds of economic errors and wrongheaded policies. He famously connected this lesson to Bastiat in a retelling of his broken window parable, so that generations to come could see and learn from the wisdom of Bastiat. Hazlitt was often the lone voice of reason in the mainstream press. While his colleagues promoted every expansion of government, Hazlitt remained critical, but not out of stubbornness or zealotry. Every opinion was backed with reason and consistent application of his one lesson. In this way, Hazlitt is a model not just for Austrian economists today, but for every student, teacher, and writer. Be consistent, but not stubborn. Stand up for your principles, but also represent them in a rhetorically compelling way. Engage in debate, but remain level-headed and don't get angry. In a 1984 interview, Hazlitt commented on why he thought Economics in One Lesson became so popular. He said, "I just treated it good-naturedly, and I think it helped persuade people. I wasn't hammering at the reader." Hazlitt's character is evident in his writing as well as his life. In the same interview, Hazlitt discussed his early difficulties in maintaining a job. Whenever he was fired, he knew it was because he didn't have the skills his employer needed. Hazlitt went from job to job, accumulating skills and searching for his own calling. He found journalism as a home by stumbling into a job as a stenographer for the Wall Street Journal. Through old-fashioned hard work and determination, he made his way up to proofreader and then reporter, columnist, and editor. It was around this time Hazlitt realized an interest in economics and later came across the work of Ludwig von Mises. Hazlitt reviewed Socialism in 1938 and started corresponding with Mises, who was in Geneva at the time. When Mises fled Europe to the United States in 1940, he called Hazlitt. Hazlitt was starstruck, and he said it was as if John Stuart Mill himself had called him. Mises came to the U.S. with almost nothing. He left behind his position and reputation as professor and had to start from scratch in the U.S. Hazlitt worked to get Mises grants, academic positions, and articles in the New York Times. Hazlitt is also known for his book, The Failure of the New Economics, a line-by-line critique of Keynes's general theory. Error after error and fallacy after fallacy, Hazlitt demolishes the Keynesian system. In the foreword, Murray Rothbard recommends it as a complement to Human Action by Mises. Rothbard says, "The complete refutation of a vast network of fallacy can only be accomplished by someone thoroughly grounded in a sound positive theory." Henry Hazlitt has that groundwork. And later he says that Hazlitt is uniquely qualified for this task and performs it surprisingly well. It is no exaggeration to say that this is by far the best book on economics published since Mises's great Human Action in 1949. Hazlitt's takedown of Keynes's marginal propensity to consume concept is particularly satisfying. Keynes argued that there is a fundamental psychological law that governs the relationship between income and consumption spending. For Keynes, this relationship is constant and universal, and it is a crucial element of his system and subsequent policy recommendations. After just some superficial scrutiny, Hazlitt dismantles the theoretical structure of Keynes's propensity to consume concept, but then Hazlitt goes deeper. He reveals that the fundamental psychological law that backs up this rigid mathematical relationship that forms the cornerstone of Keynesian macroeconomics is asserted and established just on Keynes's mere say-so. No other economist or psychologist before him had ever suggested this relationship in the rigid and mathematically exact way Keynes presented it. As a final blow to the propensity to consume nonsense, Hazlitt shows data that clearly indicates both the opposite and the non-universality of Keynes's claim that increases in income must always be accompanied by proportional increases in consumption and saving. Hazlitt was not only interested in economics, but social ethics as well. In the Foundations of Morality, he asserted that economics shows us that social cooperation is the best way for both individuals and entire societies to attain their ends. He said, "When the rightly understood interests of the individual are considered in the long run, they are found to be in harmony with and to coincide with the long-run interests of society. And to recognize this leads us to recognize conduciveness to social cooperation as the great criterion of the rightness of action. Because voluntary social cooperation is the great means for the attainment not only of our collective, but of nearly all our individual ends." In this way, he followed Mises's conclusion that the division of labor, far from just an interesting concept in economics, is actually the wellspring of civilization itself. In his concluding remarks, Hazlitt made this clear. Thus, social cooperation is the heart of morality, and the means by which each of us can most effectively supply his own wants and maximize his own satisfactions. It is only the division and combination of labor that has made possible the enormous increase in production, and hence in want satisfaction, in the modern world. Society is based on an economic system in which each of us devotes himself to furthering the purposes of others as an indirect means of furthering his own. Thus, egoism and altruism coalesce, and the antithesis between the individual and society disappears. So for Hazlitt, economics was more than just a field of study. Economics provides the framework for a moral and prosperous society. So promoting sound economics meant for Hazlitt promoting peace and cooperation. Throughout his life, Hazlitt sought to make these common sense ideas popular, and he realized striving for this goal required not only standing on the shoulders of giants like Mises and Bastiat, but also making his own original contributions to economics and ethics. Let us emulate Hazlitt and do likewise.
For more content like this, visit Mises.org.